Okay, I want to start today with a sentence that I read in our source material this week.
Hmm.
It's a sentence that honestly kind of haunted me for a few days after I read it.
Oh, yeah.
I was walking around my kitchen, looking at my family, and this sentence was just ringing in my ears. It's just 8 words, but it feels like it takes a sledgehammer to the entire modern concept of
I
relationships.
think I know the one you're talking about. It's the opening salvo, the thesis statement for the whole bombshell.
Love is not a feeling. Love is what begins when capability ends.
There it is. It is a striking opening, and it sets the stage for what is probably one of the most rigorous and frankly, ruthless deconstructions of human connection we have ever covered.
Ruthless is the right word. I mean, usually when we do a deep dive, we're looking at, a book or a couple of articles. Today, I feel like we're looking at a crime scene.
A crime scene.
Yeah. We have a stack of documents here. There's a heated debate transcript. There's a critique of two very different drafts. And then there are these two manifestos with these incredibly intense titles.
Right. The moral architecture of universal love and the structural mechanics of moral care.
The heavy stack. And some of the pages are like covered in red ink, notes in the margins, exclamation points. It looks like a war zone between two different philosophies.
Well, that's what it is, in a way. A war for the definition of our most fundamental connections.
And the mission of this deep dive is to sift through that wreckage and analyze a theory that proposes a radical restructuring of how we define love, marriage, and commitment.
And when we say restructuring, we aren't talking about, how to spice up date night.
No, we are way past that.
We are talking about tearing the house down to the studs. The lens we need to use today, and this is explicitly stated in the source material, is what they call structural isomorphic.
Okay, let's pause on that term immediately, because when I saw structural isomorphic, my eyes glazed over a little bit. It sounds like something from an engineering textbook, not a relationship guide.
It does sound technical, I get it.
Yeah.
But the concept is actually very intuitive. In systems theory, isomorphism refers to a situation where two complex structures map onto each other perfectly.
Okay.
They might look different on the surface. One might be a biological cell, the other might be a city grid. But the underlying rules, the code that runs them, is identical.
So we're looking for the same code running in different places.
We are looking for invariant architecture. We are not looking at love as a story. We aren't looking at it as a sentiment or a Disney movie. We are analyzing love as a system. We are ignoring the surface language, the poetry, the romance, the vows, to track what the system does.
Which I have to admit made me pretty uncomfortable at first.
Yeah.
I'm reading this, and I'm the guy who likes the romance. I like the narrative. I like the idea that my relationship is this unique story that I'm writing with my wife. And this theory basically comes along and says, ignore the poetry, look at the plumbing.
That's the friction point, isn't it? That's
Wow.
where it gets under our skin. We are conditioned to view our relationships as these unique narratives. But the source material argues that the modern definition of love, the spark, the chemistry, the soulmate narrative, is actually a system failure.
A system failure.
It's a glitch.
A glitch. You're calling the best feeling in the world a glitch. The thing that songs and movies are all about.
The text calls it a glitch. Or, more accurately, a misidentified signal. And the goal of these documents is to see if a more structural view, one that is admittedly colder, drier, and, less romantic, might actually offer a solution to human loneliness that works better than the current model.
A model that they argue is failing us miserably.
The divorce rates would certainly suggest it's not a perfect system.
So buckle up. We are about to take the concept of falling in love and put it under a microscope that might just dissolve it entirely. But before we get to the solution, we have to understand the problem. Why do these authors think the current way we love is broken?
They don't just think it's broken, they think it's engineered to fail.
Yeah, they do not pull punches. There's a section in the first draft, the aggressive one, where they call the modern view of love a distortion. And then in the margins of the critique, someone has scribbled the word brainwashed.
Strong language. But, from a systems perspective, it's not entirely wrong.
What do you mean?
Well, let's unpack that. Because brainwashed implies some sort of malicious intent. I think the more precise structural argument here is that we have fallen into an evolutionary mismatch.
An evolutionary mismatch.
We are confusing a biological signal for a social promise.
Okay, but isn't that just being human? I mean, you meet someone, your heart races, you get the butterflies, you can't eat, you can't sleep. That feels like the most natural thing in the world. How can you call that brainwashing? It's biology.
It is biology, absolutely. But what is the function of that biology? This is where we get into the concept of the dopamine
The
trap.
dopamine trap, it sounds like a bad techno club from the 90s.
It's much more dangerous than that, apparently. Biologically, that feeling of falling, the obsession, the sleeplessness, the constant checking of the phone, that is a chemical signal of novelty.
Novelty?
It is your brain releasing massive amounts of dopamine, norepinephrine, and serotonin to reward you for finding a new potential mate. It is, and this is a key term from the text, a motivational amplifier.
Okay, so it's the engine revving. It gets you off the couch and into the gene pool.
It gets you into the room. It overcomes the natural human fear of intimacy, of vulnerability. It's the rocket fuel.
Mm.
But here is the structural problem that the sources highlight again and again.
Yeah.
That chemical state is, by definition, temporary.
Right. The expiration date.
The sources cite biological consensus on this. This phase, often called limerence or the honeymoon phase, lasts anywhere from 18 to 36 months.
3 years, Max. That feels pessimistic.
It's not about pessimism. It's about neurochemistry. Your brain literally cannot sustain that level of chemical output forever. It would be like running a marathon at a sprint pace. You'd burn out. You'd die.
And the argument here is that modern society has tricked us into building permanent legal and social structures. Marriage, mortgages, children, 30-year commitments on top of this temporary chemical foundation.
So we're pouring concrete on top of a firework.
That is the perfect isomorphic analogy. And when the firework burns out, as it structurally must, the dopamine fades. And suddenly people look at each other across the breakfast table and say, I fell out of love.
The spark is gone.
The spark is gone. I've heard that so many times.
But the text argues, no, you didn't fall out of love. You just finished the chemical cycle you were in. The system didn't fail. The system did exactly what it evolved to do. It got you to reproduce.
The failure was ours.
The failure was ours. The failure was expecting that chemical flare to be structural integrity. We mistook the rocket fuel for the rocket ship.
See, this is where I start to get defensive for the romantics out there. Because when you say it's just a chemical cycle, it makes it sound like the love wasn't real, like it was a trick. But it felt real. It felt like the most real thing in my life.
And that feeling is valid as an experience. 100%. But it's dangerous as a blueprint.
What's the difference?
The source material compares it to a sugar crash.
Yeah.
Romance is the sugar. It gives you a high. It makes you feel alive. It's delicious. But if you try to live on it, if you try to build a life out of only sugar, you end up malnourished.
We're malnourished romantics.
We are. The text argues that we are a society that is starving for structure because we only eat the candy of romance.
Wow.
And this leads us to the most controversial distinction in the text, the part that probably made you write in your notes. The source material draws a hard line, a concrete wall between marriage and love. And it defines them in a way that I think would make most wedding planners faint.
Oh, absolutely. When I read this section, I actually wrote, what, in my notes with a few exclamation points. It's a very rigid, functional distinction.
It is. According to the text, marriage is defined strictly as a coordination structure between capable adults.
Which sounds like a business merger. Coordination structure. So unromantic.
It essentially is. It's about shared labor, communication, alignment, reliability. It's the logistics of life.
The plumbing.
The plumbing.
Yeah.
Do we pay the bills on time? Do we raise the kids efficiently? Do we respect boundaries? Do we operate the household machinery without friction? It's about being good partners in the business of living.
Okay, so that's marriage. Just two capable people running a household, keeping the lights on. Then how does it define love? Because usually we think marriage is the expression of love.
Not here.
Yeah.
This is the core thesis, the line that started our whole conversation. Love is a behavioral protocol triggered by incapacity.
Incapacity.
Yes. The text argues that true love, not the feeling but the moral function, is not mutual delight between equals. It is a unilateral response to helplessness.
So wait, let me get this straight. If I'm happy, healthy, and capable, and my wife is happy, healthy, and capable, and we're having a great time, we're laughing, we're building a life, we aren't loving each other.
Under this specific architectural model, no.
Yeah.
You are cooperating.
Cooperating.
You are enjoying camaraderie. You are engaging in radical cooperation, which is a wonderful and necessary thing. But you are not loving in the structural sense because neither of you requires a safety net. The safety net isn't deployed.
Man, that is cold. I mean, I get the logic, but it feels like it strips the joy out of the good years. It's basically saying you guys are just roommates until one of you gets hit by a bus.
I understand the resistance. I really do. The host in the debate transcript felt the exact same way. They argued that this view is bleak, that it's a eulogy for romance.
A eulogy for romance. I like that.
But let's look at so what here? Why does the author insist on this distinction? Why be so rigid? Why kill the vibe?
Yeah, why kill the vibe?
It's not to devalue the happy times. It's to fireproof the relationship against the bad times. Think about it. If you define love as mutual delight, I love you because you make me happy, because you're fun, because we have great conversation. What happens when the delight stops?
Well, then the reason for the love is gone.
Exactly. What happens when one partner becomes depressed and isn't fun anymore? Or gets a chronic illness and can't go on adventures? Or just becomes really, really difficult to be around for a year because they're grieving?
Right.
If love is delight, then the love is structurally gone.
Yeah.
The contract is void.
You're not making me happy anymore, so I'm out. We see that all the time.
But if love is a protocol for incapacity, then that moment, the depression, the sickness, the grief, that is not the end of love. That is the exact moment the love turns on.
So it's a definition designed to survive tragedy.
Precisely. It shifts the weight of the relationship from the surface, do I feel good, to the foundation, are you safe? It transforms the marriage from a vehicle for personal happiness into a survival pod for two.
Okay, survival pod for two is a slightly better branding than business merger.
A little bit.
But I want to dig deeper into this idea of incapacity because the text uses a very specific archetype to explain it. And it's not the spouse, it's the child.
This is section 2 of our analysis, isomorphic abstraction. If we want to find the purest structural form of love, the text says, look at the parent-child relationship. That's the template.
The text calls this transaction 0.
Right. Think about an infant. A baby is loud, messy, expensive, and sleep-depriving. They take everything and give back absolutely nothing in terms of practical utility.
They are the definition of helpless. They are tiny little tyrants of need.
They don't help with the rent. They don't offer emotional support. They don't tell good jokes. They are total capability vacuums. And yet, that is the strongest love known to the human species. Why?
Well, the evolutionary biologists would say it's to propagate the species, keep the DNA going.
Sure, that's the biological layer. But the structuralist says, we love them because they are helpless. The vulnerability triggers the care. It is sacrifice without return. It is a one-way street of resources flowing from the capable, the parent, to the incapable, the child.
Okay, I follow that. We are wired to protect the weak. That's the biological layer.
But here is where the source material makes the jump to the social layer, to marriage. It argues that we have created a category error in our modern marriages. We treat marriage like a trade.
A transaction.
A transaction. I give you validation, you give me security, I give you sex, you give me companionship. It's a deal.
Which is fair, right? Reciprocity is a good thing. I mean, nobody wants a one-sided relationship where one person does all the work.
Reciprocity is great for business. It's great for friendship. It's the foundation of a healthy society. But the text argues that you cannot trade favors in a sacrament.
A sacrament. That's a strong word.
It is. The point is, if marriage is just a trade, then the moment you stop paying up, maybe you get sick and can't provide security, or you get old and lose your looks, the contract is void. The deal is off.
So the text is trying to move marriage from the trade category to the child category.
It wants to install the transaction 0 software into the marital hardware. It wants us to look at our partners not as people we trade with, but as people we are covenanted to protect when they can no longer trade.
This leads to the analogy that I found both brilliant and, I have to be honest, deeply disturbing. The firefighter.
The firefighter analogy. This is the crux of the argument about interchangeability. And this is where most people get really uncomfortable.
Yeah, walk us through this, because this is where the romantic part of my brain really started to scream, no.
So the source asks a simple question. When a firefighter runs into a burning building to save you, do they do it because you are funny?
No.
Do they do it because you have a great personality? Do they do it because you're their soulmate?
Of course not. They don't even know my name. They do it because I'm in a fire.
Right. They save you because of your condition, you are in danger, and because of their capacity, they are trained to save. Who you are, specifically, is irrelevant. You are structurally interchangeable with any other human in a fire.
And the text argues this is how we should love our spouses.
That's the argument.
That sounds generic. It sounds awful. I mean, I want to be loved for me. I want my wife to love me because of my specific jokes and the way I make coffee and our shared history, not just because I'm human and built.
Of course you do. We all do.
If she loves me just because I'm the guy in the fire, I feel like a prop. I feel invisible.
That is the humanist perspective,
Yeah.
and it's valid. We crave that specificity. We want to be the main character in our own story.
Yeah.
But the structuralist perspective asks, is that safe?
Is it safe? What do you mean?
If you are loved for your specific traits,
Hmm.
your humor, your intellect, your provider status, what happens if you have a stroke and lose your humor?
Hmm.
What happens if you get dementia and lose your intellect? What happens if you lose your job and can't provide?
Wow.
If you are loved for your unique self and the self disintegrates, which it will through age or illness, the justification for love disintegrates with it.
Okay, that's the dark side of being special.
If I love you for your wit and your wit is gone, do I still love you? Under the trade bottle? Maybe not. But if you are loved like a victim, and a fire interchangeable, simply a unit of suffering that needs care, then the love is guaranteed.
It's unconditional.
It's unconditional because it's not based on your conditioning.
Mhm.
It's based on your condition. It guarantees safety because it doesn't require you to be worthy of being saved. You just have to be there.
So it's a trade-off. You give up the ego boost of being special in exchange for the absolute security of being safe.
That is the deal the structural model offers. It sounds cold, you are just a unit of suffering, but it is the only definition of love that is essentially waterproof, fireproof, and time-proof.
It's fascinating because it forces you to ask what you really want from a partner. Do you want to be admired or do you want to be held when you fall apart? And the text is saying you can't build a 50-year structure on admiration.
Admiration is a flimsy beam. Duty is steel.
But wow, duty is steel. That's a bumper sticker that doesn't sell. People want passion is fire, not duty is steel.
It doesn't sell, but it holds the roof up.
Speaking of how this message is sold, we need to talk about the sources themselves. Because we have these two drafts, and the difference between them is wild. It's like watching a preacher argue with a robot.
It really is a clash of tone and vocabulary. This is section 3. Layered meaning. And honestly, looking at these drafts side by side is a masterclass in how language shapes our reality.
Let's look at draft 1. The moral architecture of universal love. This thing is aggressive. It's theological, it's accusatory, it's written with a hammer.
I have a highlighted section here from draft 1. Listen to this tone. You have been trained to worship the idol of romance. You treat your partner as a mirror for your own vanity. When the mirror cracks, you discard the person. This is not love. This is predation disguised as sentiment.
Predation disguised as sentiment. I mean, ouch. It feels like I'm being yelled at. It's making me the bad guy. Like, you idiot, you fell for the Disney movie and now you're miserable because you're shallow.
It reads like a manifesto. It uses terms like brainwash, Trojan horse, weaponized dopamine. It frames the modern romantic as a fool who has been duped by a consumerist system designed to sell greeting cards and movie tickets.
And honestly, when I read that, I stopped listening. I got defensive. I wanted to say, hey, don't tell me my feelings are fake. Don't tell me I'm a predator.
Which is exactly why the critique source, that audio file we have, Love is Structure Notice Spark.m4a, flagged it.
Right.
The critique points out that draft 1 insults the reader. If you tell someone they are a fool for feeling butterflies, they close off. You lose them. The message dies because the delivery is an attack.
Exactly. But then you have draft 2, the structural mechanics of moral care. And this one, well, it went full refrigerator manual.
It did. It's like they took all the feedback and overcorrected into oblivion. It stripped out all the moral outrage and replaced it with systems theory.
I have a quote from that one too. Listen to this parallel passage from draft 2. The operational stability of the dyadic unit relies on epistemic alignment regarding function. The sensation of infatuation is a variable, not a constant. Therefore, the system must prioritize cooperative cognition over transient emotional states.
Dyadic unit. Cooperative cognition. It's like reading a user agreement for a toaster. It's completely sterile.
It's clinical, it's dry, it removes the human stakes entirely. It makes marriage sound like a software update.
So draft 1 insults the reader. Draft 2 bores the reader. One has too much heat, the other has no pulse.
And that's the critique. The critique proposes a third way, compassionate revelation.
Compassionate revelation. I like that. It sounds like a good approach for, well, anything difficult.
The idea is to stop blaming the individual for wanting romance. Don't say you are stupid for wanting the spark. Say you are the victim of a system design flaw.
Blame the architecture, not the tenant.
Exactly. It frames it as an evolutionary mismatch. Our biology wants dopamine because it thinks we need to reproduce now, but our society wants stability because we live for 80 years. We are being exploited by commercial narratives that sell us the sugar when we need the meal.
I like that framing so much better. It makes me feel like the author is on my side, helping me hack the system rather than judging me from a pulpit.
Speaking of pulpits,
Yeah.
we cannot ignore the theological layer here. The outline explicitly brings up the Jesus argument. And this is not about converting anyone, but about analyzing a historical structuralist.
Right, the non-dual synthesis. I admit, I usually gloss over the religious stuff in source material, but this argument was actually really compelling as a piece of data.
It is. The source notes that historically Jesus of Nazareth preached a specific kind of love called agape.
Break down agape for us.
It's unilateral charity. It is love for the sick, the poor, the enemy. It is love that expects nothing in return. It's the firefighter running into the building. It's the parent caring for the infant.
The defining characteristic is that it's non-reciprocal.
Exactly. Jesus never preached eros romantic, mutual, you complete me love as the foundation of the kingdom. That was a Greek thing, a different operating system.
So agape is, I give to you because you need. Eros is, we give to each other because we want.
Correct. And the source argues that modern marriage is a structural failure because it is trying to force agape into the shape of eros.
We're trying to take the love for the enemy energy and squeeze it into the love for the sexy partner container.
And it doesn't fit. We want our partner to be our lover, eros, and our savior, agape, simultaneously.
But those systems have different rules. Eros requires mystery, distance, and capability. You're attracted to the strong, competent person. Agape requires closeness, vulnerability, and incapacity. You're moved to care for the weak, helpless person.
So when the text says we have a category error, it means we are trying to run two contradictory software programs on the same hardware at the same time.
And the hardware is overheating. The system is crashing. The text argues we need to acknowledge that these are two different systems for two different times.
For different phases of a life.
Exactly. Eros is for the start. Agape is for the end.
Which brings us perfectly to the timeline, because this is the part of theory that flips the script. Literally. Section 4. Process sequence. The structural reversal.
The core paradigm shift is this. Love belongs at the end.
Most of us think love, marriage, hope it survives.
Right. We start with the fantasy, love, then we hit reality marriage, and we cross our fingers that the fantasy survives the reality.
And usually it doesn't, not in its original form.
The text proposes, start with reality, structure. Earn the safety of love.
Let's map this out, because this is where the how comes in. The text breaks life into two phases. Phase 1, the middle, this is the, 40 years of health, roughly.
In this phase, according to the model, you don't need love in the sense of a safety net. You are capable. You can walk, talk, earn money, and feed yourself. What you need here is a coordination structure.
You don't need a nurse. You need a partner, a co-pilot.
You need someone who grabs a bucket when the roof leaks. The text is very funny here. It says you need someone who grabs a bucket, not someone who writes a poem about the rain.
Okay, let's roleplay this for a second, because I think this is where people get stuck. Tuesday night, the roof starts leaking, water is dripping on the carpet. The romantic, let's call him poet Paul, says, "Oh, look at the tears of the heavens. It reflects the sorrow in our souls."
And the water ruins the rug and the floorboards.
Right. Meanwhile, the structuralist, let's call her practical Patty, she doesn't say anything. She gets the bucket, she calls the roofer, she moves the furniture.
And the rug is saved. The house is saved.
But here is the question. Is Patty loving Paul? She isn't hugging him. She isn't gazing into his eyes. She's just working. She's doing logistics.
In the structuralist view, that work is the love. Or rather, it is the maintenance of the structure that allows love to exist later. For 40 years, you build, you operate. You have conflict, you resolve it. You build trust, not through grand gestures, but through reliability.
Through 1,000 Tuesdays.
Through 1,000 Tuesdays. I can count on you to get the bucket. That is more profound than 1,000 poems.
It's the intimacy of truth. I trust you because you actually fixed the roof, not because you told me you would.
Exactly. Then comes phase 2. The end.
Sickness, aging, mental decline, the inevitable entropy of the human body.
This is when the safety net is deployed. This is when love and the agape sense, the unilateral care begins. Because now, one person is incapable.
I have to play the humanist here again. This sounds like that eulogy view of marriage we talked about. It implies that the best, most sacred part of our relationship is waiting for me to be on a ventilator. It feels morbid. It feels like we're just waiting to die. Like the whole middle part is just a prelude to tragedy.
It is morbid if you fear mortality. But the expert voice in me and the source text would counter. It is realistic. The text argues the real act of love is not falling. It is staying when reciprocity ends.
Staying when reciprocity ends, that hits hard, because reciprocity is the foundation of almost every other relationship we have.
It is. But marriage, in this view, is the exception. Think about the vows. In sickness and in health, we rush through the sickness part to get to the cake and the party. But the text says the sickness part is the whole point of the contract.
It's not a bug, it's the feature.
It's the core feature. It's reframing the goal. We usually think the goal is happy ever after. This theory says the goal is not alone at the end.
Not alone at the end, that's powerful.
It's not about waiting for doom. It's about building a structure strong enough to hold the tragedy when it inevitably arrives. Because it will arrive. Even if you are the luckiest couple on earth, one of you will eventually need the other to be a nurse, a caregiver, a witness.
So you're saying don't look at it as a grim wait for death. Look at it as, I am building a fortress so that when the storm comes, I am not outside in the rain.
Precisely. And knowing that fortress is there changes how you live inside it today. It removes the anxiety. You don't have to worry, will he leave me if I get sick? Because you have built a system designed for sickness.
That connects to the next piece of the puzzle. If we accept this timeline logistics first, safety later, how do we choose the person we build the fortress with? Because the source says we are doing it all wrong. We are choosing based on chemistry, but we should be choosing based on something else.
Section 5, the causality frame. This is the distinction between chemistry and compatibility. And again, the definitions here are specific and functional.
The text calls chemistry a motivational amplifier.
Think of chemistry like a turbo boost in a car. It gets you moving very fast. It gets you into the room. But it blinds you to the dashboard. You don't look at the gas gauge. You don't look at the check engine light because the turbo feels so good.
So you're doing 100 miles per hour, but you haven't checked the brakes.
Or the steering, or if you even have enough gas to get where you're going. And the brakes in a relationship are the structural warning signs.
Like what?
Bad credit, volatile temperaments, different life goals, poor conflict resolution skills, family trauma they haven't worked through, all the hard stuff.
And the text argues that the spark makes us ignore these lethal structural flaws. We say, oh, he has a temper, but the connection is so strong.
Or, she's terrible with money, but we just have so much fun together.
We can fix it with our love. I've said that. I've heard friends say that. Our love is big enough to overcome his gambling debt.
And the structuralist says, no, it isn't. System state overrides emotion. If the structure is bad, the dopamine will fade, and you will be left with a bad roommate who has a gambling debt. The math doesn't work.
So compatibility is defined not as we vibe or we like the same movies, but as functional alignment.
Functional alignment. Do your operating systems match? Do you argue in a way that solves problems or just creates more damage? Do you view money as a tool for security or a tool for pleasure? Do you have the same definition of clean?
It's boring stuff. It's unromantic stuff. It's the stuff you talk about on a third date that kills the mood.
It is. But it's the stuff that determines whether the house stands or falls. And this leads to what the critique calls the relief of realism.
The relief of realism.
If we stop looking for a soulmate, a mystical other half that completes our soul, and start looking for a functional partner, there's a massive sense of relief. The pressure is off.
Freedom from performance.
Yes. You stop auditing your feelings every day. You stop asking, do I still feel the spark? Is the magic still there? Did my heart skip a beat when he walked in? Those are exhausting questions.
They are. It's like having to get an A+ on an emotional test every single day.
Instead, you ask, are we building? Is the roof holding? Is the bill paid? Did we solve that disagreement from yesterday?
It's the difference between being an actor on a stage, constantly performing romance for an audience of 2, and being a construction worker just laying bricks. One is exhausting, the other is just work. And work produces something tangible. A wall. A house.
The text uses the sugar crash metaphor again here. Romance is sugar. It gives you a high, but it leaves you malnourished. Structure is the meal. It's protein, it's vegetables. It's not as exciting as candy, but it sustains life.
So the argument is, we are a society that is malnourished because we only eat candy. We are starving for structure.
We are starving for safety, and safety doesn't taste sweet. It tastes bland. But it keeps you alive.
This brings us to the synthesis. Because look, I can't go home and tell my wife, honey, good news, I don't love you anymore. I just structurally align with you and I'll take care of you when you're senile.
I would strongly advise against that opening line.
Yeah.
That leads to divorce, not structure.
Right. So it feels incomplete. We need to bridge the gap. Can we have both? Can we have the structure and the spark, Or are we condemned to a life of boring efficiency?
The critique source, the M4A file, argues for a yes and approach. This is section 6, dimensional completion. We don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Okay, lay it on me. How do we combine the poet and the engineer?
We validate the spark. We admit it's real, it's fun, it's a wonderful part of the human experience. But we reclassify it.
We give it a different job description.
Exactly. We don't call it love. We call it delight. We call it play. We call it attraction. We acknowledge that it's the beautiful, exciting, wonderful appetizer, but it's not the main course.
Okay, so the spark is the decoration on the house. It's the nice paint, the pretty garden. It's not the foundation.
It is not the foundation. You can have the candle at dinner. Candles are beautiful.
Yeah.
But you don't try to heat the house with the candle. You rely on the furnace for heat. You rely on the structure for survival.
And here is the synthesis, the positive spin on this dark theory that I actually really loved. Earn the safety to fall apart.
Earn the safety to fall apart.
Yeah.
Unpack that.
This is the ultimate value proposition of the whole model. You build the rigid, boring structure now, the functional alignment, the shared labor, the duty, so that later, when you lose your mind or your health or your job, you are safe to do so. You don't have to keep performing success or happiness or attractiveness to be loved. You can break and the structure will hold you. You have earned the right to be a wreck.
That actually sounds incredibly romantic in a heavy, grounded way. It's the most romantic thing we've talked about.
It redefines romance. The ultimate definition of love here is not being seen or being understood. Those are great, but they are secondary. The ultimate definition is being safe.
It shifts the focus from the self, am I happy, am I fulfilled, to the unit, will we survive?
Correct. It transforms the marriage from a vehicle for personal happiness into a survival pod. And frankly, in a world that feels increasingly chaotic, a survival pod sounds pretty good.
It does. It really does. And it suggests that the greatest act of love is not a grand gesture, not the trip to Paris, but a quiet consistency. It's the showing up when you don't feel like it. It's making the coffee every morning for 40 years.
So where does this leave us? We've analyzed the text, we've deconstructed the dopamine, we've thought about the firefighter, and we've rebuilt the house. But there's a final thought in the debate transcript that really stuck the landing for me, a question that lingers.
The final provocation.
The debater asks, are we brave enough to accept a definition of love that offers no personal reward?
Oof. That is the haunting question. Can you love someone simply because they need it, with zero expectation of getting anything back? Can you be the safety net without any guarantee that someone will catch you? Can you do it for its own sake?
It's a harsh vegetable to eat. It really is. It goes against every consumer instinct we have.
Yeah.
We are trained to ask, what's in it for me? In every transaction.
But maybe this is the one transaction that shouldn't be a transaction.
The expert in you seems to think this systems upgrade is necessary.
I think it's the only way out of the loneliness epidemic. If we all operated on this protocol, love as duty, marriage as structure loneliness would effectively vanish. We would all be safe. We might be a little less giddy, we might have fewer butterflies, but we would be safe.
It reminds me of that closing line in the critique. The candle at dinner is nice, but do not confuse the candle for the beams holding up the roof. Check the beams.
Check the beams.
So, listener, that is our challenge to you today. Not to go home and blow out the candle. Keep the romance, keep the fun, enjoy the delight, but maybe take a flashlight and go down to the basement and look at the beams. Are you building on a feeling? Or are you building a structure that can hold you when the feeling fades?
Because eventually it always rains.
On that cheery but necessary note, thank you for diving deep with us. We'll see you next time.
Stay safe.